The wind tore across the frozen plains like a living thing, a roaring, icy beast that seemed to consume everything in its path. Lyra wrapped her coat tighter around herself, but the gusts cut through even the thickest layers, leaving her shivering to her very bones. She clutched her daughter Myra to her chest, her small body trembling in the cold. Lyra could barely see through the blizzard. The snow danced violently, blinding them as it whipped across the jagged ice formations. Each step was agony. The frost hardened on their hair, eyelashes, forming delicate crystalline patterns, but each sparkly thread was a warning. Time was running out. Lyra's mind raced, faster than the storm itself. They had been running for days. The aliens had found them, tracking them relentlessly across the frigid landscapes. Lyra remembered the first night of the escape, when their shuttle had been attacked in orbit. Explosions had shaken the cabin, alarms screaming, and before she could react, Myra had been crying, terrified, asking why the world was ending. Lyra had promised her that everything would be okay, even though her stomach twisted with doubt. Humans were clever, resourceful, but they were fragile, fragile like porcelain in a storm. Yet somehow she had to find a way to survive. Somehow. The ground beneath them was uneven, jagged shards of ice protruding like teeth from the frozen earth. Lyra stumbled, catching herself with one hand on the icy surface while holding Myra with the other. Her legs burned, her lungs heaved, and yet she refused to give in. Myra's tiny voice trembled in the wind. "Mom, I'm cold," she whispered, her breath forming little clouds in the frozen air. Lyra kissed the top of her daughter's head, her lips barely brushing through the frost that had formed there. "I know, my little star, I know, but we will find warmth soon. I promise." They had no map, no functioning instruments, no shelter in sight. The shuttle had carried them far from human colonies, deeper into the frozen wasteland than anyone had dared to go. Every step forward was a battle against the elements. Lyra searched desperately for anything, rocks to shield them from the wind, natural formations to hide from the alien trackers, anything to give them even a moment of rest. Hours passed. The sky had long turned to a bruised gray, fading into a colorless void that pressed down on them. Lyra's fingers were numb, her boots frozen stiff, her eyes stinging with snow. Myra leaned against her shoulder, shivering violently, but she refused to cry aloud. Lyra's heart ached at the sight. She knew what she had to do. She scanned the horizon and saw a jagged outcrop of rocks. It wasn't much, but it might provide some shelter. Each step toward it felt like dragging herself through molten ice. She spoke softly to Myra, whispering encouragements, singing little tunes she remembered from when Myra had been a baby. Anything to keep her daughter's spirits from breaking completely. The rocks offered a brief reprieve from the wind, creating a small pocket of space where the gusts were less violent. Lyra wrapped Myra in her coat and held her close, rocking her gently. "We'll rest here for a moment," she said, trying to convince herself as much as her daughter. The snow swirled outside, but inside that tiny cave it felt almost safe. Almost. Lyra knew the aliens were close. She could feel their presence, not physically, but through the nagging tension that pressed on her chest. They were trackers, hunters, and they were relentless. Every sound the snow made, every shadow that flickered across the jagged walls of ice, could be a sign of pursuit. Lyra's mind refused to settle, even as Myra's soft breathing began to slow. Her daughter was exhausted, but so was she. "I have to keep moving," Lyra whispered to herself. "We can't stay here." She looked around the small cave, scanning the ice formations for anything useful. There were shards of metal, pieces from the shuttle that had broken in the crash. Lyra picked them up, examining them with careful fingers, her mind already working on ways to use them. Sharp pieces could be used for cutting or defense. Flat shards could reflect light as signals, anything. Survival was about using every resource, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant. Night fell faster than she expected. The blizzard intensified and the temperature plummeted. Lyra wrapped herself and Myra in whatever extra layers she could find, digging into her mental reservoir of knowledge and training. She had been trained for extreme conditions, but never like this. The vast emptiness of the planet pressed down on her, and for a moment doubt crept in. How could she protect her daughter against such overwhelming odds? Myra stirred, rubbing her tiny hands across her frozen cheeks. "Mom, will we be okay?" Lyra swallowed hard, forcing a smile. "Yes, Myra, we will, I promise. We just have to keep moving." They set out again, moving slowly, deliberately, each step measured to conserve energy. Lyra's eyes darted constantly, scanning the snow for threats. She could see the faint glow of distant ice formations, the moonlight reflecting off the frozen peaks. Somehow, they had to reach the geothermal vents she remembered from old maps of the planet. The vents could provide warmth and perhaps safety. Hours dragged into what felt like eternity. The cold was unbearable. Lyra could feel the frost biting through her gloves, her boots sticking to the ice with every step. Myra's tiny hands clutched at her coat, her body trembling uncontrollably. Lyra could feel her own energy slipping, her mind growing foggy from exhaustion. She refused to collapse. Not yet. Not while Myra's life depended on her. Suddenly, Lyra spotted something unusual, a faint shimmer in the distance, a light cutting through the white haze. Her heart leapt. Could it be a human settlement? Could it be help? She tightened her grip on Myra. "Myra, look," she said softly. "Do you see the light?" Myra's wide eyes blinked through the snow. It's beautiful," she whispered, her small voice filled with awe. Lyra allowed herself a brief spark of hope, but she did not let her guard down. The aliens could be anywhere. The light could be a trap or worse. Still, it was the first sign of anything resembling salvation in days. She adjusted her course, moving carefully toward the glow. The snow grew heavier, and the wind howled more fiercely, as if protesting their journey. Lyra's muscles screamed in protest, but she pushed on. Myra began to hum softly, a tune Lyra had sung to her countless times. It was a fragile sound, but it kept the cold and fear at bay, a reminder that even in the harshest places, life and hope could persist. Finally, after what felt like hours of crawling through the storm, they reached a ridge. From this vantage point, Lyra could see the source of the light more clearly. It was a small, human-built outpost, powered by geothermal energy. Smoke curled from chimneys, warm glows flickered through reinforced windows. Relief and exhaustion collided within her chest. They were not alone. Humans had found them. Humans could save them. Lyra's legs shook as she led Myra down the icy slope toward the outpost. Every step was a battle, but she refused to falter. Myra's trust in her was absolute, and she could not betray it. They reached the outer wall, snow-packed and ice clinging to the metal. Lyra pounded on the reinforced door, her fists raw and numb. Moments later, the door opened, revealing a man in heavy winter gear. His eyes widened as he saw Myra, and he quickly ushered them inside. The warmth hit Lyra like a wave, a living contrast to the frozen nightmare outside. Myra gasped, pressing herself against her mother's side. "You're safe now," the man said gently. "Come in. Come in quickly before the storm returns." Lyra looked around the small outpost, taking in the warmth, the lights, and the human presence. Her body sagged with relief and exhaustion. She had done it. She had protected her daughter, for now. But as she looked out the window at the raging storm, she knew the danger was far from over. The aliens would not give up. They would track them, relentlessly, across the frozen expanse. Lyra's mind shifted immediately to the next step. Survival inside this outpost, planning, preparing. The warmth of humanity had reached them, but it was not enough without strategy, courage, and unyielding determination. She held Myra close, whispering reassurances as the child finally drifted to sleep in her arms. Outside, the blizzard raged on, a relentless reminder of the world's cruelty. But inside, for the first time in days, Lyra allowed herself to feel hope. Humanity's warmth had found them, a flicker of light in the endless snow. And as she watched her daughter sleep, Lyra silently vowed that no matter what came next, she would never let the cold, the storm, or the enemies of her kind take her daughter from her. She had survived this long against all odds, and she would survive the rest too, for Myra and for the unyielding spirit of humanity itself. The storm would rage, but humans were clever, resourceful, and resilient. Lyra understood it now in the deepest part of her soul. They might be fragile, they might be small against the universe's vastness, but they endured. And they always would. The warmth of the outpost enveloped them like a blanket, but Lyra could not relax. Her body shivered not from cold now, but from tension and exhaustion. Myra clung to her, still trembling from hours in the blizzard. The human man who had saved them stepped back, allowing them to enter fully. Lyra's eyes scanned the room carefully. It was small, but it had everything a survivor could hope for: insulated walls, glowing panels, and a small heater humming in one corner. "My name is Irene," the man said, his voice calm yet firm. "You're safe now. No one can reach you here unless they want to face the geothermal traps." Lyra nodded, still holding Myra close. Her instincts, honed through days of fear and survival, made her cautious. "Thank you," she said softly. "But how did you find us? This place is isolated." Irene shrugged, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Humans have ways of finding each other. Even out here we watch for signs, light, movement, unusual patterns in the snow. It's why I came when I saw you." Lyra's eyes softened slightly. Humans. She had been alone for so long, surviving only because of her own will and knowledge. Seeing another human, someone who had risked himself to help them, sparked a feeling she hadn't felt in days: hope. But she did not let herself forget the danger. The aliens were still out there, relentless hunters who would track them across the frozen wasteland. Myra's tiny hands clutched Irene's coat. "Are you going to keep us safe?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Irene crouched down, meeting her eyes. "I will do everything I can," he promised. "You are safe now, for tonight at least." Lyra nodded, grateful for the warmth, but she could not let herself be lulled into complacency. She knew that safety was temporary. Survival required planning, and she had little time before the aliens would track them here. She set Myra down gently and allowed her to explore the small room. Myra's eyes sparkled as she examined the panels, buttons, and devices around them. Lyra's heart ached to see her daughter's curiosity returning, even after so much hardship. It reminded her that humanity had a way of surviving, not just through strength, but through wonder and hope. Irene led Lyra to a small table and gestured for her to sit. "You must be exhausted. Eat something, warm your body, you need strength." Lyra hesitated, looking down at the small portions of food. Her stomach had been empty for days, but she knew she had to eat. "Thank you," she said, taking a bite. The warmth spread through her body, and for a moment she allowed herself to relax. As they ate, Irene explained the situation. "The aliens that attacked your shuttle are part of a larger faction. They harvest humans for their advanced biotech. You were lucky to escape the crash, but they will continue to track you if you remain exposed." Lyra's mind sharpened. She had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed heightened her urgency. "We need to move. I can't risk them finding us here." Irene nodded, his eyes serious. "I expected that, but moving through the storm now would be suicide. We must wait for the right time and plan carefully." Lyra glanced at Myra, who was sitting quietly, eyes wide with awe. "We will," she said softly. "I promise, Myra, we'll survive. I will protect you no matter what." Night deepened outside, the storm raging against the walls of the outpost. Lyra sat quietly, listening to the wind, her mind working. She had survived by using her knowledge of the environment, her understanding of human ingenuity, and her determination to protect her daughter. She had learned to think like a predator, to anticipate threats, to act before danger struck. And now, with Iren's help, they had a chance to fight back. Morning came, pale and gray, with the storm showing no signs of slowing. Lyra had rested little, instead using the time to inspect the outpost, find weak points, and plan their next steps. Myra slept in a small cot, exhausted but peaceful for the first time in days. Lyra allowed herself a brief moment to feel relief. She had survived the night. They had survived the night, but the aliens would not wait. They were clever, relentless, and patient. Iren had set up a communication device trying to reach nearby human settlements. "We need reinforcements," he said quietly. "We cannot hold them off alone if they find this location." Lyra nodded, her mind racing. "Then we prepare traps, anything we can use to slow them down. We'll use the terrain, the ice formations, everything. They may be stronger, faster, but we have our minds. That is humanity's edge." Iren studied her, admiration in his eyes. "You are remarkable. Few would endure what you have endured. Even fewer would keep fighting with such determination." Lyra forced a faint smile. "I have no choice. I fight because my daughter lives and because humans do not give up. That is our way. That is who we are." The hours passed as they prepared. Lyra taught Myra small survival skills, reinforcing the lessons she had learned during their journey. Myra listened intently, absorbing every word, even as she remained too small to fully comprehend the dangers ahead. Lyra knew that she had to prepare her daughter not just physically, but mentally. Humanity thrived on intelligence, resourcefulness, and courage, even in the youngest hearts. By late afternoon, the storm had eased slightly. Lyra and Iren moved to inspect the perimeter. The ice was treacherous, jagged formations casting long shadows across the snow. They found tracks, alien tracks, fresh and ominous. Lyra's stomach tightened. The aliens were close. They had found the outpost. "We have little time," Lyra said quietly. "We need to set the traps now." Together, they worked swiftly. Lyra used shards of metal and debris to create alarms, rigged the natural ice formations as barriers, and mapped escape routes through the nearby vents. Iren followed her instructions with precision, impressed by her knowledge and ingenuity. Lyra's mind was sharp, focused on every detail. Each trap, each plan was a step toward survival, toward protecting Myra. As night approached, they returned to the outpost, exhausted but ready. Myra had been moved to a secure inner room where she could rest safely. Lyra checked the barricades one last time, ensuring every opening, every weak point was reinforced. She could hear the faint hum of the heating systems, the small comforts of humanity amidst the harsh world outside. Suddenly, a distant sound reached them, a low, mechanical hum different from the wind. Lyra froze, Iren's eyes narrowed. "They are coming," he whispered. Lyra's heart pounded. She had expected this moment, but it did not make it any easier. She checked her weapons, her makeshift traps, and prepared herself mentally. The aliens would be clever, but she had one advantage: human ingenuity, cunning, and the unbreakable bond between mother and daughter. The first silhouettes appeared against the dim light of the outpost. The aliens moved cautiously, scanning the terrain, unaware of the traps set for them. Lyra's breath slowed, every muscle tensed. She whispered to Iren, outlining the plan in precise, measured words. Every action had to be synchronized, every moment critical. When the aliens reached the first barrier, it snapped shut, surprising them. A piece of ice fell, creating a loud crash that echoed across the frozen plains. The aliens hesitated, and Lyra seized the moment. Another trap triggered, sending shards of ice tumbling down the slope. The aliens roared, confused and disoriented. Lyra and Iren moved silently, coordinating their actions. Each step, each maneuver was a calculated effort to protect Myra. Lyra's heart pounded, but her mind remained clear. She had survived storms, hunger, and exhaustion. She would survive this too. Hours passed in a tense, dangerous dance. The aliens adapted quickly, but Lyra's traps and Iren's strategic thinking kept them at bay. Myra slept peacefully, unaware of the battle being fought to protect her. Lyra's determination never wavered. Every action, every risk was for her daughter. Humanity's strength was not in brute force alone. It was in cleverness, courage, and the willingness to sacrifice for what mattered most. By dawn, the aliens had retreated, at least for now. Lyra and Irene collapsed inside the outpost, exhausted but victorious. The small victory was a reminder of humanity's resilience. Against impossible odds, they had survived. They had fought, outsmarted, and endured. Lyra held Myra close, tears streaming down her face. "We survived," she whispered. "We are still here, and we will keep surviving no matter what comes next." Irene nodded, respect and admiration in his eyes. "Humanity is incredible. You've shown that today more than anything else." Lyra looked at her daughter, and in that moment she understood the truth of those words. Humanity was fragile, yes, but also brilliant, resourceful, and unyielding. They endured, adapted, and triumphed against threats far greater than themselves. And as long as they had each other, there was no storm, no enemy, no force in the universe that could truly break them. Outside, the snow fell softly, the storm finally giving way to a pale morning light. Inside, warmth, hope, and determination burned brightly. Lyra knew the aliens would return. They always did. But humans never gave up. And neither would she. The pale light of morning barely cut through the endless snow as Lyra peered out from the outpost's reinforced window. Her eyes scanned the icy horizon, every ridge, every shadow, every distant glint of metal. She had known this day would come. The aliens would return, relentless as ever, tracking them with patience only predators possessed. But she was ready. Humans were clever, resilient, and unpredictable, and she was a mother who would sacrifice everything for her daughter. Myra slept quietly in her small cot, unaware of the storm gathering outside. Lyra brushed a strand of frozen hair from her daughter's forehead, feeling the warmth of her tiny body against her own. "I will protect you," she whispered softly, more to herself than to Myra. "No matter what." Irene, ever vigilant, approached her side. His face was calm, but his eyes reflected the seriousness of the situation. "They are moving closer," he said quietly. "We may not have much time." Lyra nodded. "Then we fight smart, not just hard. Every step we take must count." The outpost had been reinforced overnight. Lyra and Irene had set traps using the jagged ice formations outside, creating natural barriers, tripwires, and alarm mechanisms. Small, sharp shards of ice were rigged to fall, blocking paths and slowing the aliens. Every plan had been executed with precision, but even the best preparations could fail against cunning enemies. Hours passed in tense anticipation. Every sound, the crunch of snow, the howl of wind, the faint echo of metal, made Lyra's pulse quicken. She remained near Myra, whispering calming words, reminding herself that fear was a tool, not a weakness. She could not falter. Not now. Then, as if on cue, shadows moved against the frozen landscape. The first alien scouts appeared, glinting in the weak light. They moved cautiously, aware of the traps Lyra and Irene had set. Lyra's hands tightened around a makeshift spear, and Irene readied a thermal weapon he had salvaged from the outpost. The first scout triggered a tripwire. Ice shards tumbled down a slope, sending a cascade of frozen debris crashing around it. The alien roared, disoriented, and the sound echoed across the barren plains. Lyra's heart pounded. It was time. "Irene now," she whispered. Together they executed the plan. Traps were triggered in succession. Ice spikes fell, barricades collapsed, and the aliens were forced to retreat, regroup, and confront the dangers Lyra had created. Each trap was a lesson in human ingenuity, a demonstration of resourcefulness that even the aliens could not anticipate. Lyra moved with precision, her body nimble despite exhaustion, guiding the flow of the battle. The aliens adapted quickly, though, their movements growing more coordinated, more aggressive. Lyra's traps slowed them but could not stop them entirely. She knew that at some point she would have to confront them directly. The thought did not frighten her, it only strengthened her resolve. "Mom," Myra's small voice called out from the inner room, and Lyra's heart clenched. "Are they going to hurt us?" Lyra rushed to the cot, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. "No, Myra, they won't." "Not if I can help it. You just stay here and be brave, okay?" Myra nodded, her eyes wide but trusting. It was that trust that gave Lyra strength, a reminder of what was at stake. She turned back to Irene. "I'll lead them away. You take Myra and escape through the vents if necessary." Irene shook his head, but his eyes softened with understanding. "You don't have to do this alone." Lyra smiled faintly. "I do. It's my choice. It's what a mother does." The alien force surged forward, breaking through some of the outer defenses. Lyra stepped into the open, spear in hand, luring them toward the preset traps. The first few aliens fell, impaled on jagged ice or trapped in pitfalls, but more poured in behind them. Lyra's muscles burned, her lungs ached, but she pushed forward, moving strategically, using the terrain to her advantage. Every step was calculated. Every movement was precise. Irene guided Myra through the hidden vent passages, ensuring her daughter's safety. The small tunnels were warm compared to the frozen wasteland outside, and Myra's small hands clutched Irene's arm tightly. "Mom's brave," she whispered. "She is," Irene replied quietly, "and we'll make sure her bravery wasn't in vain." Back outside, Lyra faced the aliens head-on. They were stronger and faster than any human could withstand alone, but she had prepared for this moment. Each strike, each dodge, each calculated move was designed to maximize the trap's effectiveness. She drew them closer to the most dangerous formation, a series of ice spires rigged to collapse with precise timing. As the aliens closed in, Lyra triggered the mechanism. The ice fell, crashing with deafening force. Several aliens were pinned beneath the shards, incapacitated but not entirely defeated. The ground shook beneath her feet, and Lyra struggled to keep her balance. One alien lunged at her, claws extended. She sidestepped, using its momentum to send it crashing into a spire. Hours seemed to pass in a blur of movement, pain, and relentless calculation. Lyra's body screamed for rest, but her mind remained clear. She remembered every lesson, every survival tactic, every instinct honed over years of preparation. She was human, yes, fragile in form, but brilliant, adaptable, and unyielding in spirit. That was the essence of humanity, the ability to endure, adapt, and overcome against impossible odds. Finally, with a final push, Lyra drew the remaining aliens toward the largest trap, a collapsing ice bridge over a deep chasm. She baited them carefully, timing her movements with precision. As the last alien stepped onto the bridge, Lyra triggered the mechanism. The ice cracked and gave way, sending the alien tumbling into the abyss below. Silence followed, broken only by the wind and the distant hum of the outpost. Lyra's body sagged against the remaining ice formations. She had done it. She had fought, sacrificed, and survived. But she was injured, bruised, and exhausted to the brink of collapse. Still, her first thought was Myra. She needed to ensure her daughter's safety. Through the vent system, Irene led Myra out to a safe clearing. Lyra emerged behind them, weak but determined. Myra ran into her mother's arms, tears of relief mixing with the dirt and frost on her cheeks. "Mom, you did it." Lyra hugged her tightly, whispering, "We did it. You are safe. That is all that matters." Irene smiled, admiration shining in his eyes. "Humanity never gives up," he said quietly. "Even in the harshest conditions, even against superior forces." Lyra nodded, feeling the truth of his words. Humans were fragile in body, yes, but their minds, their hearts, and their spirits were indomitable. The warmth of human ingenuity, courage, and love had carried them through the storm, through the blizzard, and through the alien threat. Myra looked up at her mother, eyes wide with awe. "Will they come back?" she asked softly. Lyra kissed her forehead, feeling the ice crystals on her lips. Maybe, she said honestly, but we are ready. We have each other, and humans always find a way. Irene led them to a nearby ridge where the morning light broke through the clouds. The storm had passed, leaving the frozen plains glistening in the soft sun. Lyra looked out over the landscape, thinking of all the dangers they had faced. Every step, every decision, every sacrifice had been worth it. Myra was safe. Humanity's ingenuity had triumphed. Lyra and Irene began the journey back to the main human settlement, moving carefully across the snow. Lyra carried her daughter when Myra grew tired, refusing to let her struggle in the cold. Irene walked beside them, a silent guardian, ensuring that no further dangers approached. As they walked, Lyra thought about the lessons they had learned. Humanity's strength was not measured in weapons or size, but in intelligence, courage, and the unbreakable bonds between people. She had sacrificed everything to protect Myra, and in doing so, she had witnessed the essence of human greatness. Hours later, they reached the human settlement, a small cluster of buildings glowing warmly against the frozen world. Guards welcomed them, offering food, warmth, and medical aid. Myra was tended to, her small body nourished and resting finally in safety. Lyra allowed herself to collapse into a chair, exhausted but alive. Irene sat beside her, silent but proud. "You did more than survive," he said quietly. "You showed what it means to be human." Lyra smiled faintly, brushing her daughter's hair from her face. "We survived," she said. "That is all that matters. We survived, and that is the triumph." The settlement's warmth surrounded them, the human spirit evident in every action, every smile, every gesture. Lyra realized that no matter how harsh the universe, humanity would endure. They would adapt, fight, and overcome. They were fragile in body, but their hearts, minds, and courage made them unstoppable. Myra opened her eyes, looking at her mother and Irene. "We're safe now," she said softly. Lyra kissed her forehead once more. "Yes, my little star," she said. "We are safe. And we will continue to survive. Humans always do." Outside, the sun rose over the frozen plains, casting long shadows over the snow. The storm was gone, but the memory of it remained, a reminder of the trials they had endured. Lyra knew that danger might return, but she was ready. Humanity was ready, and together they would face whatever the universe threw at them. For the first time in many days, Lyra allowed herself to relax fully, holding Myra close. She had sacrificed everything, endured every hardship, and fought with every ounce of her strength. And in the warmth of humanity, she had found something unbreakable: hope, courage, and the unyielding spirit that defined them all. No storm, no alien, no obstacle could ever extinguish that. Humans endured, humans fought, humans triumphed, and Lyra, with her daughter safe in her arms, understood what it truly meant to be human.